Well, hello and greetings.
Hi.
My name is Liz,
And I am Scandal.
and we're going to be doing a brief discussion slash reaction to the book preview of Wilder Girls
Read by me, but also done by Rory Power.
Yes, so on our channel, in case you got to this not directly our whole channel, we perform audiobook previews.
Yep.
The part of the book that is free to the public as they're trying to share it with you and go, hey, do you want to get this thing?
They're trying to
And
intrigue you.
Then we react to them and sort of see what we think. In this case, Wilder Girls, for me, was a trip. In the sense that the whole thing, I mean, it's clearly a horror. Like, it is a horror written for teens, or like a older juvenile audience.
Yep.
And it is like, I want to say like a bottle episode of like a show, as far as like its framing. It's set on a very tiny island.
Yep.
And
it's very isolated.
And it's basically like a tiny dystopian, essentially, because they're so isolated that it creates a dystopian experience of their entire functioning world there has shut down and turned into this new thing. Your first person perspective from the main character. And
I apologize, I don't remember her name at all.
I
do not
remember
know any of these characters'
names. Like, so the names were a couple of them ran together for me. Like, they weren't distinctive enough from each other, but also like the names didn't feel super important because the way our protag talks about the experience, it for me was more like just getting a tour through things of what's going on in the beginning, of just what life is like. So it wasn't as important, it didn't feel like to me, to get to know the people as it was to understand the gravity and the experience of what's going on.
And the level of body horror, definitely. There is some very casual body horror going on in this book, so if you haven't listened to the preview, you should go listen to it, because you won't understand what we're talking about.
Unless body horror bothers you, and I'm probably just
gonna recommend you not read this book.
Yeah, because it is explicit.
Yeah, it really is. Actually, I was really surprised, honestly, for some of it. It doesn't go as far, so spoilers at least for me, because I already went and I read the whole book. I was curious enough that I went, this is wild, and I finished the damn thing, and I was just like...
I did, like Scandal plowed through it in like a day and a half, just going, I read the preview, and oh my god.
No, it took me maybe a couple of hours.
But like you had to pick it up again.
Yeah, because we had to do other stuff, but
yeah, it
really didn't take me long.
It was only a couple of hours to read the book overall. I mean, it's not a short book, but Scandal reads quickly.
I also was going to say, but that's not fair, because I tend to read fast. It was, so just though for the beginning, like, it was enough, really, for me to go, like, I don't know what to really think about this book, because, like, I liked it. It's intriguing enough to begin with, and then the way that it ends, which I'm not going to talk about, but it's like, I think it's enough. If you're curious enough for what it is, go ahead, give it a shot. It's interesting. It's got a lot going on. I like the fact that there was the level of actually, like, finally someone going, look, if you have isolated people, it doesn't matter if you assume they're all basically the same sex or have the same gender experience. They're going to end up liking each other because you seek comfort out in those circumstances. That's just what happens. Actually, there was somebody that I dated years ago who mentioned their uncle, like, he worked in the Navy, and he used to crack a joke about saying you have 48 single men who go under the sea, and then when they come back up again, it's 24 couples that come back up. Like, it's just a thing that happens. It's sort of that situational thing, but also for some people, that's actually one of the reasons why they sometimes pursue jobs like that. It probably doesn't happen nearly as often anymore, but that's just one of those behaviors that can pop up. And there's nothing wrong with it either.
It can help people form connections if they're in an isolated environment. But that's one of the things that actually a lot of teen novels play on really hard when they're trying to write a romance, is isolating the characters together, which forces them to build a connection.
Right.
However, this actually doesn't have any tones of romance in it. While it does have, as Scandal mentioned, thematic, it suggests queer relationships, in that you have the girls bonding really closely together because they are the only things on the entire island, and it doesn't really make any, like, in the preview it suggests there's not going to be any, like, beating around the bush about it, but again, that's just the preview. Just as far as there's the main character and her two best friends, the three of them consider themselves like a unit that are looking out for themselves in reference to the entire world, and they do everything together, so there's that. I would say, but like, the premise, as far as it seems, is interesting, like tiny encapsulated sort of dystopia, but also I liked that the author, just for the author's voice themselves, didn't really tell you how to feel about things. And this is something I've mentioned in a couple of books,
Mm-hmm.
where sometimes when someone's doing something horrific, they'll tell you that that it is squeamish, that it is painful, that it is awful.
Uh-huh.
And this author's language didn't do that for me. Like, you could have something pretty awful happening, but if you didn't personally draw yourself into it and feel it, you could just have basically a survey of the experience.
It's also actually one of the distinguishing marks, I think, that distinguishes really
Adults?
young adult fiction from adult fiction. Most adult fiction will tell you what to feel and what to react to and what's important. Young adult fiction is very much like, here's the thing, and they went and they fell off the cliff. And they don't tell you really any great amount of gory detail or whatever else. I will say, though, for me, though, Wildish Girls, because I also read more of it, though, it gets more into that than I was expecting.
Great amounts of gory detail.
Yeah.
Even at the beginning, it suggests very clearly that there's going to be gory detail, but again, the author doesn't tell you how to feel about it.
Right.
Even as you're having an experience of someone getting their eyelid stitched up,
Yeah.
you don't get told how to feel about it or that it's terrifying or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And the character herself describing it happening to her,
Right.
it doesn't make it this big deal.
It's very benign.
Uh-huh. It's the, like, even when she describes the pain, it's not like something that she's trying to dig into you. So actually I would tend to not say it's adult and children's fiction as much as it is good children's fiction doesn't tell you how to feel. And it is something that editors and people look for in the difference between adult fiction and children's fictions. It's not what you're covering, it's how explicit you are about it and how you tell them to interpret it. And there's a couple of books that I love that are teen or juvenile fiction that handle it really, really well. And if you're looking for suggestions, go ahead and comment into the comments and I will suggest things to you. But right now I wanted to focus on this.
Right.
And I felt like that author had a really good handle on it. Also, while the book was really expositional in the beginning, it felt very, very natural because she was expositing things in reference to going through her day-to-day life. The way someone would talk themselves through essentially a traumatic experience of what do you do the next day kind of thing. Of, I will remember to get up and I will drink water, or I will notice that even though this thing has fallen apart, this thing is still together. I loved one line where she's like, her friend climbs through a window and she's like, her glorious live hair. She comments on like the lustrous, bright color of her friend's hair, even as everything's falling to bits.
Right.
And she goes, even when there's no food, there's still shampoo. And it's one of those things where you run out of certain things. And I thought that was a really neat piece. Like, if you're going to comment on anything about a character in that expositional way, it was really effective for me.
Right. She very much felt like a character who was very much trying to survive and trying to struggle. Now, part of me, I'm mostly being quiet in this review here because I'm actually struggling really hard.
Not to spoil,
but also, like, there's a descriptor of the book that I just kind of came out with in the end of going, I feel like this story is very much like a certain movie. And I don't know whether or not I should, so I'm like, it's not a bad movie. It's a classic horror movie that they've actually redone a couple of times, but I thought of it, and that doesn't mean that this book is explicitly only that thing. It's just like, it was good enough, and I actually liked the movie, even though it scared the ever-living Jesus out of me. But this was a lot like that. So I'm like, I want to endorse this book of going, if you're more than willing to kind of like stick with it. Now there are, again, like some things of going, like a lot of the characters after a while didn't sit with me for very long. I was still pretty confused as to what the crap was going on. It felt still very isolated though, and like you lacked a lot of information. But it was still good.
However, it was a challenging read.
Yes.
So even as like Scandal was performing it, and then I do a lot of the editing. As I was editing it, it was very clear that a lot of the sentences felt like garden path sentences.
Right.
And if you don't know what that is, that basically it starts out and you assume it's going to be about one thing, and then it goes a whole other direction.
Yep.
And so that was a big thing for me, even listening to Scandal sort of interpret this book and going, oh, I sort of would have interpreted that way as well, had I been reading it. And then I look at it and I'm like, okay, that's not what that is. So that was an interesting challenge, but it gives the author a distinctive voice. Right. And after a bit, you really do get pulled into the way this is, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's great fun. Well,
anyway, so I have been Liz.
And I am Scandal.
And please check out the rest of our videos on our channel. Leave comments, ask questions.
Like,
all
comment,
that would be
subscribe.
Would be lovely.
We're going to be around.
Yes. Additionally, if you like our audiobook performances, you might check out our Let's Play channel, where we also do a lot of voice acting, but we're very, very silly and freeform.
Because we're playing video games.
It's true. And that channel is just Lies and Scandal. It's featured on the sidebar under featured channels, and we would love to see you on either side of the tube. Bye!